Rate your level of presence on a scale from 1 to 10 right now.
7.
How do you know you're a 7?
I don't know. I just shouted out a number.
What do you imagine? I'm going to rate mine. Mine right now is an 8. I'm having a little fear of failure. You guys all might rate your level of presence on a 1 to 10 scale in your own seats, and then ask, what would it take, do you imagine, for your 7 to become an 8?
Yeah, just grounding in my feet. I'm feeling my spine.
Me too. Okay, thanks. And be whatever number you want.
Yeah.
Cool. What's an essence quality of yours, Vlada? Something that shows up reliably when you show up.
Love.
Love. Yeah. So when you think about yourself as a co-founder and CEO of Marco Polo, thank you, Bart, for explaining exactly what it is. How does love fit into the origin story for Marco Polo?
It is. It's like, okay. That was great. I'm glad we stood for a while.
Yeah, we can stand again.
No, I'm ready to sit down.
Okay, great.
These shoes are not that comfortable.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it started with love. I was pregnant with our first daughter. And I have 2 kids, 2 girls. One is 13, one is 11 and a half. And the journey started when I was pregnant with our first one. And for who are the parents in the room? All right, so you all know what I'm talking about. When you have kids, when you start having kids, like the world really does change. And for us, it meant asking different questions. We at the time had a ed tech company that we were running.
Yeah.
Like advertisement, not ed as in education, 2 very different things. And we just knew we were going to keep working, but we also knew we didn't want to keep working in advertisement. We wanted, like, if we were going to be away from our kids working, it was going to be something that was meaningful.
So when you think about Marco Polo,
Yeah.
tell me about where love sits and the idea of Marco Polo.
It's all about connection. And for me, love and connection are interchangeable.
So
There's more to that. Hold on.
go ahead.
I think the other piece of it is, it's not just the connection you can have on Marco Polo, but it's the way that we set up the app, or the company actually, in a way that allows for authentic connection to come up, that really lets you be yourself, which I think is love.
Okay. I was thinking a little bit about the idea of authentic connection and you being yourself, and we rode here together.
Yeah.
And I experience you routinely as showing up as love. It's my most common experience of you.
Thanks.
And then I wondered about myself. When I walk into a room like this, I notice that I often leave an essence quality of mine behind and go into a persona. So I'm wondering, in which personas have you shown up since we arrived here at 8:30 this morning?
Oh, such a good question.
Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, there was one when an old friend came by, and so there was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see you, friend. It's like the overexcited one.
Yeah.
That definitely showed up because I wanted her to feel really welcome. There was I'm a really humble speaker persona.
Yeah.
I love being on stage, but a little scared to say that. I admitted that to my friend Leah, who's here, and that felt really vulnerable. But since I already said it once, it feels easier to say now. And the scared one.
Huh. Yeah. When you think about fear, is fear here right now?
No.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
No. Yeah.
When
Heart beating fast, but I don't think that's fear.
If you think about how you show up as a leader at Marco Polo, what are some personas that you reliably end up in, either intentionally or unintentionally, in your role as CEO?
I definitely have a story that I have to show up as the inspiring one.
Can you give us a little bit of her?
Oh.
Yeah, can't wait.
No, I need to stand up for this.
Inspiring. What's her name? Does she have a name?
No, but...
Okay, we can name her.
Julie.
Great.
Julie is really inspiring. Julie really wants y'all to know that there's a loneliness epidemic that's happening right now. 12% of Americans have 0 friends. 56% of Americans are considered lonely. It's a real problem. And we are the only company that can really save the day.
Are you guys inspired?
Everybody else is right.
So inspiring. What's another persona that shows up as CEO?
The really caring one.
Oh, cool. Let's see her. What does she have a name?
No.
Let's name
I
her.
know. Let's name her.
Leah, what's her name?
Yeah, what should I name my caring persona?
Carol. Perfect. Okay, Carol. Yeah. How does she show up?
She does conscious listening.
Oh.
Always.
Oh, yeah. Let's demonstrate that. Is that okay? Yeah. Carol.
Yeah.
Carol. Listen. I just cannot deal with my manager. I mean, they are really creating some hostility around me, and they were a little rude to me in the lunchroom. And I've just had enough.
Yeah, Sue, I really hear you. You're really frustrated with your manager.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've really had enough.
I have.
Is there more that you want to say?
Oh gosh, this could take all day, Carol.
And it does.
Back to Vlada. What is a persona that shows up that you think is your least helpful role that you play as a CEO? The most undermining persona you've got?
Oh, it's the one that wants to be liked.
What's her name?
Leah.
Yeah, what's her name?
We'll call her Susie.
Oh, thanks. Okay, great.
Well, Susie.
Yeah,
Sue.
no, there's no confusion. Definitely no one thinks that about me. Okay, so she's Susie. Great. So how does Susie show up as an undermining force at Marco Polo?
I mean, she's probably like the thing that I'm working on the most. So I'm welcoming her, Leah, because I know it's about welcoming the personas too. But for me, I just end up caring too much about what the people in my company think, or investors think, or whoever thinks, that I end up overturning my inner knowing to please them. And that shows up when we're deciding on our HR practices. It has shown up when we're deciding on who to hire, or to let go, which features we're going to work. I mean, it has really shown up throughout the company's history.
And what are your strategies for working on or being more intentional about how Susie shows up so that Vlada can show up more at work?
Yeah. It's something I've sort of been aware of for a while, but I think it's only really in the last year that I've really started noticing that more. And actually, I really liked the book you recommended, Diana herself. Mm. And there's this, I've learned to trust my body more, is basically what it is. Like, I've learned about myself that I'm really good at talking myself out of things and out of feelings, out of knowing, like out of all of that, but my body doesn't lie. And so if I can really notice that as somebody's speaking, I'm contracting as opposed to like feeling open and excited, like my energy's down, then at least I know not to make a decision until I'm more comfortable with what's happening.
Oh, you know? I love that. So you just wait.
I just wait, yeah.
Yeah. Is there an emotion that is required to either amplify or suppress in order to make that pivot from Susie to Vlada?
I am really good at repressing anger.
Oh.
And that's probably the thing that's most alive for me today, and like in general right now, is seeing anger as a way of seeing like my clear boundaries, as opposed to my story before with anger was, who needs anger? Anger's not helpful. That's so over the top. Like, I have nothing to be angry about. They were doing their best, you know, whatever it is. And now like tuning in with, oh no, there's actually like a boundary here. What is that boundary? And then being able to have the courage to actually say what it is has been really helpful.
What are the benefits you have been getting
Yeah.
before you started really working on this? What benefits have you been getting most from repressing anger?
Being liked.
Yeah, Susie.
Susie loves being liked. I'm really good at it.
So what happens in those moments where you allow anger? Can you just describe a little bit how it feels in your body when you allow, when it comes time, anger shows up? Intellectually, you know, like anger serves a purpose. I learned in conscious leadership, anger serves a purpose. Something is meant to change.
Yeah.
But in your body, what does it feel like?
I think the best way to describe it is like an internal, like that. And I think because it was so like grr, and I consider myself very likable and kind and helpful, that was not really allowed. Like I was really scared what was gonna happen if I was gonna let it come out. And I still am scared. I think I'm still scared of what it's like to really have it come out. So oftentimes I'll feel it, I take a break, I process it, like I do all kinds of things before I come back.
As an ally of yours, what is one thing that I and all these other allies around you can do to support you being connected to your anger, or support themselves or their friends in being connected to their anger?
I think for me, the thing you can do is when you notice me go quiet, like if we're having a conversation and I go quiet, is because I'm grrring inside and I'm too afraid to let it come out.
Ah, that's great.
So asking me.
Yeah, I actually added to my list of emotions that I use in work, I added silence, like repression, a repression form of silence, because I think it is an emotion.
Yeah.
It's just a weird, it shows up differently. So your name of your corporation is what?
Joya Communication.
Yeah, cool, Joya, Joya. Yeah, so talk to us about joy at Marco Polo and love at Marco Polo, where it's helpful and where it's not.
The reason it's called Joy is because when we started the company, we wanted to bring more joy to the world. And we read somewhere that Steve Jobs, the way he names companies, he has an A to whatever it is you want to do. So Joya, that was the reason. And I remember actually chatting with you about the name, and you're like, well, joy is not the only emotion. Like, other emotions are allowed too. I'm like, oh no, joy is the best one. Everything else is not really necessary. And I think over time, over the years, I've really learned that as much as like joy and love and caring is something that people in our company really love and appreciate by being at the company. Like so many of we just celebrated 2 people in our company who've been there for 10 years.
Wow.
You know, so the retention we have as a Bay Area company is very unusual. But it has a dark side too. You know, and I think the dark side is there's too much niceness. Like the niceness gets in the way of making a decision that's good for the business. You know, so the way it's shown up in the past is people stay at the company longer than they should, past their time, or we don't, like there was a practice that we were doing when we were really small that I really loved. We, as a company of 10, we used to give each other feedback in public. So we'd come to a retreat and everybody would be prepared to say one thing that you could be doing better, like you'd be more effective if, and one thing that you're really effective at, and we'd do it in public. And it was amazing. But then as the company grew bigger, people started giving me feedback that's really scary. I don't like it. And I was like, okay, I just want to be liked. Susie came out, and so we stopped doing it. And I think our company really suffered from it. So this year we're bringing that back. You know, so we're not doing, we're a company of 50, we're not doing all 50, but the small teams are now starting to do that in public with one another, because that's the kind of candor that we want to be able to have. So we can make decisions faster, there's no gossip, no drama, you know, all that stuff.
And how are you orchestrating life so that you get really discerning feedback from people in the company?
I ask for it all the time. So I have like all my one-on-one sessions, we start with the reveals.
Yeah.
We also have like quarterly feedback sessions as a company where we pick people to get feedback from. Yeah, I mean, those are the main things, but I think asking for it has been most helpful.
And how often in the last 4 weeks have you received feedback that really felt like a gut punch? Even for a second.
Yeah.
One time?
Yeah.
You willing to share what the feedback was?
Yeah, this person told me that, actually, she called out Susie. She said that she thinks Susie's getting in the way of her being successful.
Her being successful?
Yeah.
Wow, say more.
Because I'm not willing to make changes that she wants to make to the organization because I'm afraid of not being liked.
Wow. So that felt like a gut punch.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because when I get feedback, when I get negative feedback, it's mostly all some version of, you are such a jerk. So when I hear you're getting feedback like, you are so overly nice, I feel like if I got that feedback, I'd be like, this is the greatest feedback in the world. But what I've come to learn is that if you have a Susie persona, that feedback sucks.
It totally sucks.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because here's how I view conscious leadership, one piece of it, one way of thinking about it. If you've read the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which those are my teachers, our teachers, and really where some of my work comes from, a lot of that book is oriented around the asshole. It's like, you're an asshole, own your shit. And having been an investor who's invested in hundreds of women and having a lot of wide range of people around me, I find that very often I'm working with people who over-own their shit. So much so that they don't set boundaries, they don't allow anger to be present. They show up as Susie and change never happens around them, and that becomes a limiting force for them in their career.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how that feedback sucks for you.
Because I've been freaking working on it for a while. And so the fact that Susie's still here as much as she is, it felt really devastating. And I could really see that she was right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, like, she's an Enneagram 8. I'm an Enneagram 2. And one of the reasons I hired her is because, like, I don't know how many people here know about Enneagrams. Do people know? Okay. Enough.
Challenger, helper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, I sort of knew going into this there was going to be a dynamic that was going to feel uncomfortable, and I really like leaning into that. But so I knew there was wisdom in it for me, you know, and so for me to be like, okay, how much of this is true? And the worst part of it that was true, you know. So then we're still in the middle of this conversation about, like, how much of it that I'm pushing back on her because of Susie or because there's some knowing in me. Because Susie also wants her to like me.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it's not just the other people in the company.
Yeah, and there's wisdom in Susie, right?
There's wisdom in Susie,
you go around,
for sure.
The last talk you did, I think you spoke to 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, it's helpful for Susie to show up on stage for 5,000 people, I imagine.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a total colossal.
Totally.
Yeah,
Sure.
right, whatever you might be. Well, you wouldn't be. Okay, so joy, likability, and a mission to create connection at a fairly global scale.
Yeah.
Is around kind of the origin story for Marco Polo.
Yeah.
At some point, you decided you wanted to raise money.
Yeah.
And if I went over to that Get Lucky board, there are a lot of people over there who are interested in raising money. So it's a hot topic in this audience based on what's over there.
Okay.
And some of them are impact people who are working on impact businesses, or so they represent on those Post-its. Let's talk about that decision to raise money and what's worked and what hasn't.
Well, the story is that we didn't have any money.
Is that a story or is that a fact?
It's kind of a fact.
Okay.
So I was pregnant. So our kids are just a year and a half apart, and I was pregnant with our second kid, and we didn't have a job at that moment because we ended up, like, you know, selling a company before landing somewhere else. We didn't even have health insurance because at the time being pregnant was a pre-existing condition. So it was a kind of a brave move, courageous to do. So we actually, like, more or less were living month to month, and we were consulting to make money for, you know, our other kid and for the pregnancy and so on. And so the plan was to consult and make money for the living while we were working on the company at the same time. And then one time, our friend came over for dinner, and he told me that he's like, I want to invest in your company. And we told him, but you don't have any money. How are you going to show me the money? And he's like, well, and this is, you know, the fortune of being in the Bay Area. And he said, like, I'm about to sell my company, so I'll be able to invest some amount. that amount was not going to be enough for us to actually last that long. So we asked 5 of our friends, and Leah was one of the people that we asked if she would invest in us, and they all said yes. And that was enough for us to have 6 months of focus time on the company. And that really helped us get it to a point where we could invest, get a proper seed round and so on. But the learning that we had was, because this company, the way we started was with this, the mindset wasn't just to make the world a better place, that definitely was. We also wanted to set it up in a way that we would want to keep working on it for a really long time. Because what we learned in our previous companies, you don't have control, turns out. Like there's ups and downs. So what would make us want to keep working even when things are really shitty? And we really had that mindset as we're picking who the investors are too. And so at times, like we picked investors who gave us lower valuation actually, because that was the person we wanted to work with. And that has been really, that served us really well.
Wonderful. So I think the time I made you the most angry, you didn't tell me then, you've told me since then, was a walk.
I didn't know I was angry.
Oh, you didn't, because you weren't recognizing
just silent.
anger. Right, you're just being Susie. I was walking with Susie, damn it. So it was on the topic of growth for Marco Polo. I'd love for you to share some of your thoughts about this kind of having the mission, which is associated with growth, right? You have an ambition to be big enough to create even more connection across the world, and kind of revenue and sort of how that's emerged in the trajectory of your company.
Yeah, so our mission, our vision is our purpose is to help people feel close, and our vision is to help 1 billion people have a sense of belonging through Marco Polo. We're not at 1 billion people yet. But the number is not that important. The reason is to just make sure that everybody in the company understands that we're not here to play small. We're really here to make really huge change in the world. And we're also really mindful about how we go about it. So for example, we don't sell advertisements. We don't have, we don't try to keep you in the app for as long as possible. There's a lot of things that we don't do that are normal growth hacking patterns, because from what we know, we don't think it's good for your health. We actually measure the well-being of people who use Marco Polo every year to see the impact we're having. And we could still be doing things wrong, by the way. So we're just checking every year to the best of our knowledge. And so part of the conversation I think you were having were about the cost of, because who's here uses Marco Polo? I know there's a few. Oh my God, wow.
It's a lot of data you're saving.
Seriously. So what Stu was pushing on me, because we store polos for such a long time, and even if somebody hasn't used the app for a really long time, we've been storing it for a long time. We're rethinking that model now to your happiness and the business sustainability happiness as well. But yeah, that was the conversation we had. So
how many years ago did you, at this time when we took this walk in the park and I was thinking about the infinite saving of everyone's data, the app was free for everyone, which is lovely, adorable. And I wonder,
Susie was really strong.
She was. So at some point you created this is just great. They created a paid model. If you use Marco Polo or you watch video, or how many people listen to podcasts at more than 1 times speed? Anyone? If you listen to Hard Fork, they've been talking about 3x and what it sounds like to listen to podcasts at 3x. Anyway, one of the benefits of the paid model that you launched was that you could speed up polos. And if you use Marco Polo a lot, you'll find out lots of people leave like 1 hour Marco Polo. This is not my personal style, but it happens. So it's kind of an ironic feature, because you don't really want to brag much about having it because you're speeding up your friends. But in any event, you launched this model and you started taking actual currency from real humans. How did that go?
That was one of the hardest decisions we had to make. So we knew, like when we started the company, that we were not going to be funded by advertisement. We knew from the beginning at some point it's going to be subscription based. And for us, the reason to do that was because we really wanted to make sure everybody's incentives are aligned. So if our customer is you, then we're working for you. If our customer is advertiser, then we're doing things that the advertiser wants, right? So for us, we always knew that. But the timing of it was like, oh my gosh, because it was during COVID. It was 2020 when COVID happened. And we had talked about doing Plus sometime soon, but that really accelerated for us. The question of making sure our business is sustainable really was top of mind. Like all the companies I know of were doing major layoffs. Like it was a scary time to be in startup world. And just the audacity to launch a paid program in COVID was kind of crazy. But for us, we knew it was a matter of like setting up the business for sustainability. And you know, we had a ton of backlash. Like I got, it was a, what is it called? Vocal minority. They were very, very vocal. I had people on Twitter tell me that I'm very greedy. By the way, I don't make the money myself. It goes to the company. I mean, there's all kinds of personal attacks, and Susie really did not like that at all. It was really hard. It was really, really hard.
How did you know you had done the right thing? What were the first few signals that you'd made the right call? Other than actually seeing money come into the bank, that must have been nice.
That was really nice because it really did feel like, oh, I think at this rate we can actually make it through, and that was a huge relief. And we looked at the numbers. Like people weren't actually leaving. There was a lot of complaining, but there was not a lot of people actually leaving, you know. And so that felt like, okay, we might be trading off a percentage of people leaving, but not enough to make it worth for us to do something different.
Right.
And the stories we get from Marco Polo, I mean, are so impactful, you know, that we want to make sure we can stay around for as long as possible.
Yeah. Vlada, you use conscious leadership at Marco Polo, part of your culture. Mm-hmm. We've talked about feedback, for example, where it sounds like it's really working. Yeah. Where has conscious leadership really failed?
Well, I think that story with feedback, it failed at first.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like even right now where it's failing is the whole company really adopting it. You know, because we basically right now are making it optional. So we have like everybody in the leadership team has taken some kind of conscious leadership camp training, and we have maybe a quarter to half the company have taken it, but there's some people who are not taking it. So not having the common language actually is pretty hard. I just had a feedback session with somebody yesterday where I was telling you, Stalia, they were driving in a car during a meeting with me. I was so pissed. And then I realized—
Congratulations.
I know, but I didn't say anything. I was silent. Okay. It was only later that I sent him
Baby steps.
I sent him a Marco Polo. I was like, I wasn't sure how to do it because I knew he was one of the people who hasn't taken conscious leadership. And my stance was, I'm actually not doing it. I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for me. Like it was a way for me to come back to connection with him and kind of, it felt more honest for me to make it clear what my expectations are.
Yeah. One thing that you're alluding to that I think a lot of people think about around this consciousness work is, sure, yeah, I'll be conscious. I'll be super self-aware. It's awesome. I'm going to take a ton of risk. I'm going to share super awesome feedback as long as everyone else has signed up to play. Yeah. Which makes it theoretically incredibly safe to do all this stuff that would otherwise be very, very risky. And I really hear that in what you're saying. So I think there's like, to me, Susie shows up even in that story. It's like, in order for me to actually show up with presence, to be authentic and candid in the moment, that person, I have to have a contract with that person over there that they would welcome that. Yeah. When, in my experience, if you talk above and below the line, if you think about that language, you know, that belief is below the line. I can only show up as authentically me if they agree to want to be with authentically me instead of Susie. And in reality, when you go from this safety of being below the line, like this is super familiar, I do this all the time, I'm Susie, it's great, everyone loves her, to being above the line, I'm gonna share feedback in the moment without a prior arranged time and a prior arranged format, that's scary as hell. And I think a big part of the game is the willingness to take that risk.
Totally. I mean, I think sharing feedback is scary for me still, even if I know the person's playing the game.
Cool.
But it's especially scary when I know they're not playing the game.
Yeah. I have written down on that agenda I haven't looked at yet. Like to think about, one of your learning edges seems to be embracing anger.
Yeah.
what other learning edge, by that like hippie word phrase, I just mean, the thing that you really meant to be learning right now. So what's another one of your learning edges right now?
I think my pride gets in the way of me doing the thing that's kind for me. And the way it's showing up the most is in relationships, when like I'm in an argument or argument with somebody, like my spouse or my kid or somebody, and the pride of like, well, I'm not gonna be the first one, or I'm not gonna do the thing that that person is asking me to do. Why should I do that? That really gets in the way. Or like I'll go to, well, I don't need them anyways. I'm fine by myself. I can do this. I'll take the kids by myself to this thing, or whatever.
Take your ball and go home.
I'm really good at that game too.
Yeah. You co-founded this company with your husband,
Yeah.
Michał. How did it happen that you became the CEO?
He worked on me for a year. Yeah, so he is really, he's really visionary. I love working with him. And he's really visionary. And he's also not, his passion or zone of genius is not really execution. That's more of my zone of excellence, I would say. And it was clear that as the company got bigger, that we needed somebody that was a little bit more like, this is how we're gonna run the ship, not just somebody who has a great vision. And I just didn't see myself as a CEO. I was like, I'm not that smart. You're much better than me. I don't really know, I'm Enneagram 2. There's not really many CEOs or any CEOs that I know who are my type. He and I did a accelerator or an incubator where one of the people there told me like, oh, you're gonna have a really hard time because there's nobody like you in the tech industry. And already as a woman in engineering and in tech, that was already hard to hear. Anyways, he worked for me for a year. And then during that same year, I did Leaders in Tech Fellowship Program with Young and Queerinos here, somebody here. So it's a really great program where I got to meet women who are CEOs. I was the only non-CEO at that time in the program. I got to meet men who express their emotions, and that was amazing too. And then at the end of the year, I did the School for the Work with Byron Katie. And that after coming out of that, I came home and I said, okay, I'm ready to be CEO.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Vlada, your goal, what's your goal? What's your goal for the company in terms of reach?
1 billion people.
Reaching 1 billion people.
Yeah.
And what are the 2 most likely reasons, if you don't reach that goal, that you won't reach it, that are related to you, not to extrinsic factors?
Yeah, no, I think honestly, this is one of the reasons that I'm so motivated to do all the personal growth work, because I really think that I'm like the worst enemy. Maybe this is my inner critic coming out a bit, probably. Her name is Gretchen, I have her name. She is very familiar. But I really think it's having Susie run the show more than I want her to is gonna be the reason why. What do you think? You know me pretty well.
I wonder sometimes about your attitude toward revenue and money. And I love the insight about Susie, and that makes sense to me. And she might also play in this money thing.
Yeah.
We haven't shared yet that you immigrated to the United States from Ukraine as a teenager, yeah?
Yeah.
Second person today who had an immigrant story like that. I don't know if there are origin stories about you. I don't know. What are your beliefs about money?
It's good to have it.
It's good to have it.
Yeah. But we did come, when we came to the US, we didn't have, we actually fled Ukraine. So we had to leave everything behind. And I was 11 years old. I actually remember my parents saying, okay, we now have to go. And looking, just like leaving all my stuff and leaving. And so we didn't have time to hide the money or doing our stuff. So we literally came and we didn't have anything. And so my parents, they worked 2-3 jobs, to make sure. My dad worked at a Pizza Hut. I ate a lot of pizza. Oh my gosh. Pineapple pizza, I don't like pineapple pizza at all. Hawaiian pizza, too much of that. So I just, money is good to have, for basic needs.
You're bought into the idea of money. For basic needs?
Yeah, I think I do have judgments against people who they have a lot of money and who are not leveraging it in the best possible way or are showing off.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. It might just be fun to wonder about. Is not that your company needs to end up having a lot of money or that you need to generate phenomenal returns for your investors. But I just wonder if that edge, that sort of gigantic win, might be somehow playing into some of the mix of factors. Like one of the things I think about is you have a free product and you have the story that you could expand your reach more if your product is free.
Yeah.
And I actually think there's a really good argument on the other side, which is you get people to actually put a little skin in the game and they are more attached to and they evangelize your product much more because they're invested with you in the growth and success of your business.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know.
I think money could really be a power for good.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part, like, I am looking forward to Marco Polo being hugely successful financially because we already have marcopolo.org. And I do want us to also have a way to like funnel that money towards like other benefit work that we can be doing.
If you choose to put a percentage of your salary toward your future nonprofit, do you know the pronoun you will use in your LinkedIn post?
It will be we, for sure.
Okay, great. Awesome. So Vlada, I really, first of all, have you had fun?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. That was a goal.
Yeah.
And I just really love the question today. If things ended right now, what's one thing that you would want to say? And I'd love for both of us to answer that question. Like if the whole thing, this body, if it just ended.
Like if we died.
Yeah, that.
I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and so that question was being asked earlier today, and I had my thought, which is, I just have this insane, wild, boundless sense of gratitude that my creativity has so many ways to play in this life. That's the thing I want to say. What do you want to say?
I want to say that you're enough.
Yeah. Please, gratitude for Vlada and all the work that she does. Thank you.
Thank you.